Hello everyone, welcome back to another news video here to discuss. We're looking at some signings and injury updates from the past couple of days, and we're also looking at a couple of potential trade rumors for the offseason around teams such as the St. Louis Blues, Carolina Hurricanes, and Montreal Canadiens. And we'll tell all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Talk Show. Now, before beginning this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. I'm never able to with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below. So now let's go to today's video. Now, we haven't done a news video in quite some time. We've only been doing a couple of videos over the past week, so we are a little bit backlogged with the amount of signings that we've had over the past couple of days. So we're going to get to all the signings over the past couple of days up until April 2nd, and then in our next news video, I will do the rest of the signings. So at this point in time, we have 10 signings from the last time we talked up until April 2nd. So we'll start all of this here. Most of these are also DLCs, so take that into account. So for the time being, we have 10 signings to talk about here, so we'll get to all those here. First, the Seattle Kraken have signed 2023 second round pick, right shot defenseman, Lucas Dragicevic, who is a defenseman, to a 3-year ELC with the AV of $923,000 that will begin at the start of next year. Now, Dragicevic has been a pretty good player. Last year in his draft year, put 15 goals and 75 points in 68 games. This year has actually had a little bit of a drop-off, putting up 14 goals and 50 points in 66 games, so he's under a point per game at this point in time, which isn't overly good, but still, he's a defenseman. It looks like he's going to eventually be a solid, at the very least, third pair, if not a top 4 defenseman for the Kraken. He was someone I thought would go early second round, maybe a late first rounder, but he wound up going in the later stages of the second round, so it was a pretty good pickup in my opinion for the Kraken, and I think they got a really good steal here with their contract, so that's a pretty good sign there for the Kraken. They always saw the Toronto Maple Leafs extend pending UFA Simone Benoit, who they signed as a free agent in last year's offseason. It was more of a depth addition, but due to all the injuries that the Leafs have had this year, has actually been called upon to be a really good defenseman and has been fantastic. So the Leafs signed him to a really cheap deal, 3 years at $1.35 million to remain with the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's a pretty good deal in my opinion. Now, Benoit has been with the Anaheim Ducks before this year for the past couple of seasons. Last year, his best season to date, put up 3 goals and 10 points in 78 games. Was a really good player there for the Anaheim, but they didn't want to bring him back, so they let him walk as a free agent. Benoit's playing 2 AHL games this year and has no points, but has a goal and 5 points in 57 NHL games, as a +8 rating, has actually been quite well on a pair with Jake McCabe for that Toronto Maple Leafs team, so he's been a fantastic fit, and seeing him get signed is fantastic. I think a lot of people thought he would have gotten signed, and the AV is not that bad. It's 1.35, and if down the road it doesn't start working out for them, it's an easy variable contract for the Maple Leafs. That's a pretty good move there for the Leafs to see Benoit sign his 3-year extension. He's going to be with the Leafs for the next couple of years. Then we saw the Anaheim Ducks sign a 2023 second round pick, and this was left winger Necas and Myatovic. Myatovic gets a 3-year ELC with the AV of $896,000 that we're going to start next year. Now, Myatovic was also playing WHL in his draft year last year, put up 30 goals, 60 points in 63 WHL games. Once again, this year, a little bit of a down year, putting up 9 goals and 30 points in 34 WHL games. He hasn't played as much as last year and is still near a point per game, so it's pretty good there for Myatovic. He's even gone to 3 AHL games since the signing, putting up no points. He looks like a pretty good prospect, and I think eventually could be a solid third-line winger, so that's a pretty good sign there for the Ducks. Then we saw the Nashville Predators sign 2021 4th-round pick Ryan Ufko, who's a right-shot defenseman, to a 3-year ELC with the AV of $925,000 that will begin at the start of next year. Now, Ufko had been playing over in the NCAA. Last year, put up 8 goals and 24 points in 32 games. This year, had 10 goals and 26 points in 37 games. So he had a pretty good season this year. I think eventually could be a solid third-pair defenseman there for the Predators. So pretty good sign there for Nashville to get another ELC done. Then we saw the Edmonton Oilers wind up re-signing pending RFA goaltender Oliver Rodrigue, who was a 2018 second-round pick, to a 1-year contract extension with the AV of $775,000 that will begin at the start of next year. So pretty good sign there for the Oilers. Rodrigue has actually been doing quite well in the AHL last year at 2.77 GAA and a 912 save percentage in 29 AHL games. This year in 35 AHL games has a 2.75 GAA and a 914 save percentage. So he looks even better this year. Now Rodrigue, I think, could be eventually a solid backup for the Oilers, or potentially even like a 1A goaltender in the future. For now, he's probably the third stringer, but that's a fantastic sign there for the Oilers to get him locked up. Then we saw the Vancouver Canucks sign forward prospect Ty Mueller, who was a 2023 2023 4th round pick to a 3-year ELC with the AV of $870,000 that'll be going to start next year. Now, Mueller was playing over in the NCAA last year, 12 goals, 25 points in 34 NCAA games. This year had 11 goals and 26 points in 40 games. So similar point total to last year in 6 more games, which is pretty good for him. And I think Mueller could eventually be a solid middle 6-4 there for the Vancouver Canucks. So pretty good pickup there for Vancouver. Then we saw Toronto Maple Leafs sign undrafted prospect, one of the guys who was highly sought after and one of the bigger free agent prospects in this year's free agent class coming over from the NCAA, and Jacob Quillian, who's a center, to a 3-year ELC with AV of $875,000 that we're going to start next year. Apparently, the Leafs and Bruins had really big interest in this guy. Quillian last year had 19 goals and 38 points in 41 NCAA games. This year had 2 less goals at 17, but also had 46 points in 39 games. So Quillian looked fantastic this year. I do expect him to eventually get a solid role at the NHL level, probably as like a third-line player for the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's a pretty good sign there for the Leafs to get one of the top NCAA free agents locked up for the next couple of years. So that's pretty good there for the Leafs. Then we saw the Boston Bruins go out and get undrafted prospect Jackson Nelson, who is a center, to a 1-year ELC with the AV of $870,000. Once again, another guy who was playing over the NCAA last year, 10 goals and 27 points in 40 games. This year, 19 goals and 31 points in 39 games. So he looked pretty good. I think eventually could be a solid like bomb 6-4 for the Bruins. So that's a pretty good pickup there for Boston to get another young prospect. Then we saw the Florida Panthers an undrafted goaltender Cooper Black, who was once again another undrafted prospect, to a 2-year ELC with the AV of $950,000 that we're going to start next year. Now, Black has been doing pretty good last year at the NCAA level, put up 3.07 GAA and an .899 save percentage in 30 games. This year in 30 games has a 2.58 GAA and a .910 save percentage. So a lot better this year than it was last year. As much as the Panthers do have a pretty good tandem of Knight and Bobrovsky for the future, I think Black could eventually be a solid third stringer, maybe even be a backup at some point. So that's a pretty good pickup there for the Panthers. And then we also saw the Carolina Hurricanes, one of their top prospects, in 2021 second-round pick, right-shot defenseman Scott Morrow, to a 3-year ELC with AV of $916,000 that will begin for the rest of this year and for the next 2 seasons. Now, for Morrow, he's also been playing in the NCAA, put up 9 goals, 31 points in 35 games last year. This year, 6 goals and 30 points in 37 games. So he looks like a pretty good prospect there for the Carolina Hurricanes and should eventually be a solid second pair of defensemen for them. So that's a pretty good sign there for the Hurricanes, and I really do like that signing. So those are all the signs from the past couple of days. We'll get to the rest of them that have happened between April 2nd and whenever we do our next news video, when we get to the next news video. Going over to a quick look here at some injury updates in the past couple of days. Joel Hanley has an undisclosed injury out day-to-day for Calgary. Rasmussen has an upper body injury out day-to-day for Detroit. Couturier has a shoulder injury out day-to-day for Philly. Winnipeg has Niederreiter having a leg injury out day-to-day for the Jets. Crookshanks has lower body injury out indefinitely for the Ottawa Senators. So that's some bad blows there. We also saw Jacob Brzee be out week to week with upper body injury. We saw Tanner Jeannot have upper body injuries out day-to-day for the Bolts. Zach Bogosian has undisclosed injuries out day-to-day for Minnesota. Nicholas Waugh has undisclosed injuries out for an unknown period of time for the Vegas Golden Knights. John Gibson has undisclosed injuries out day-to-day for Anaheim. McTavish has a lower body injuries out day-to-day for Anaheim. Dunn has undisclosed injuries out day-to-day for Seattle. Tarasov has an upper body injury. So is Kane Goulding, Montreal. Both are going to be out for an unknown period of time. Jake Bean has a hand injury. He's going to be out for the rest of the season. Anthony Cirelli has upper body injuries out day-to-day, while Brandon Hagel has undisclosed injuries out for an unknown period of time. So some bad injury blows there for the past couple of days. But we also saw Val Nichushkin and Yakov Trenin in Colorado be cleared to play. Gudas in Anaheim be cleared to play. Chabot in Ottawa be cleared to play. Fast in Carolina be cleared to play. Charterer in Ottawa be cleared to play. Gustafson in New York be cleared to play. And McDermott in New Jersey to be cleared to play. So really good stuff there. Good to see guys like Gustafson back. Good to see guys like Fast back. Good to see guys like Nichushkin, Chabot, and Gudas back as well. But bad news to see guys like Gibson go down with an injury, Dunn go down with an injury, Bean be out for the last week and a half of the season, Roy be out for the Golden Knights, Jeannot be out for the Bolts, Rasmussen be out for the Red Wings. Just bad stuff there, and hopefully those guys are able to get back in the not just in the future. So lots of interesting stuff there on the injury front. And lastly here, going over to a quick look here at a couple of quick trade rumors to discuss. First, for the Montreal Canadiens, it sounds like there's a couple of people out there who think that the Montreal Canadiens may take a serious look at moving Josh Anderson this offseason. Now, Anderson has been the guy who has not been badly with the Montreal Canadiens, but has not been living up to his contract. I mean, Anderson has spent 4 seasons with the Montreal Canadiens so far. His first year was a pretty good season, picking up 24 points in 52 games. Then the next 2 seasons, he had identical point totals, picking up 30 points in 69 games, both last year and the year prior. But this year's not done overly well. In the first 3 years, he at least hit the goal mark. Last year, hit 20 goals. This year only has 8 goals and 18 points in 71 games. So he's played way more games in the past 3 with Montreal, and he's put up less points. So Anderson has not looked overly good this year. As much as he's actually been able to stay relatively healthy, he's not been able to produce at a really high level. So a lot of people do think that Anderson may be able to be moved. There was a lot of talk over the past little while that for the right price, Montreal may move Anderson. There's a lot of talk about, I think it was last year, it might have been, that Edmonton had made an offer to try to get Anderson, and that it was including a first-round pick, and the Canadiens rejected it. Not sure if that's even true or not, but it does seem like Anderson's a very likely trade candidate this offseason. Now he's got this year plus 3 more with a modified no-trade clause at a $5.5 million cap hit. So it would definitely be a difficult trade to make move for sure, especially with the way that Anderson is producing this point in time. And at this point, he's probably ceiling is like a 30 to 40 point season. But still, I think there'd be a couple of teams interested. He's a good rough and tumble forward. He can provide some net from presence, can help score at some points if he finds the right situation in the top 9. So I wouldn't rule out the fact that Anderson could get moved. I just think that's a really hard trade to pull off. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. But don't count out Anderson being potentially moved by the Canadiens. It sounds like that's a very likely possibility for Montreal if and when they want to try and move him. But I do think there will definitely be a couple of interested suitors depending on what the ask is for Montreal. So I'll have to wait and see on that. But expect Anderson to potentially be a trade candidate there for the Montreal Canadiens. Next, going over to St. Louis Blues. We've seen a couple of people recently say that the Blues may look to try and make some changes in this offseason. There's a very likely chance the Blues will make the playoffs now. They're currently, I think it was 7 points out of a playoff spot. They're not looking overly good right now, so there's a very likely chance that the Blues do end up missing. Now, Bennington's had a pretty good season this year. I don't think you fault him for them missing the playoffs. He's actually had a pretty good season. But there have been a couple of other contributing factors to why this Blues team was probably going to miss the playoffs. I mean, their defense, they were supposed to make some changes to it last year. They never did. Offensively, they don't really have a whole bunch of depth. I mean, they have some pretty good depth, but according to a recent article from Rutherford, who covers the St. Louis Blues, he thinks there's a very likely chance that they're going to move off some pieces. He doesn't think they're going to be huge players in the trade market or free agency, so they probably won't go after any of the extremely huge fish that are on the market via trade or free agency this offseason, but he does think that guys like Kapanen, Blais, Verana are all probably unlikely to be back. Those guys are most likely going to leave via free agency. He also thinks that it's very unlikely that the Blues do any sort of a buyout, given current GM Doug Armstrong's reluctance to do something like that. But there's also the fact of they could definitely try and move a couple of defensemen. I mean, they have Krug signed, Falk signed, and Parayko signed at a $6.5 million cap hit. I think Parayko's for this year plus 6 more, and I think Falk and Kruger this year plus 4 more, so they could definitely try and move one of those guys. Letty, I think, has 2 years left after this year at a $4 million cap hit, so they could definitely use some more cap flexibility. They don't have an overabundance of it, so to move a couple of those big time defensemen to try and improve their cap flexibility, and then maybe go out and try and get another defenseman would be probably a really smart move for the Blues. I think if they can improve their defense, they could probably be a playoff team, maybe even as early as next year, so I think that's a possibility there for St. Louis, so we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. But according to Rutherford, who covers the St. Louis Blues, he thinks there's a very likely chance the Blues are going to make some pretty significant changes this year, and even though there may not be overly huge players for free agency or via trade, he does think that there's a very likely chance we could see some changes, especially on the blue line for the St. Louis Blues this offseason, so we'll have to stay on that. And lastly, going over to the Carolina Hurricanes, there's a very likely chance we see some major changes from the Carolina Hurricanes this offseason. Now, the Hurricanes have a ton of pending UFA players. I mean, Antti Raanta, who's been mostly the third string goaltender recently, as a pending UFA, he's probably not going to be back. On the defensive end, you have a ton of pending UFAs. You have Tony DeAngelo, who has not worked out really well, and I think he probably will leave, but you also have Skjei, you have Pesce, who have been 2 really good namestays on the top end. I think Orlov and Slavin are going to be a year away from UFA status, so you got a lot of interesting UFAs on that Carolina Hurricanes team. On the blue line, on the forward group, there's also a ton of pending UFAs. You have Jay Gensler, who I've seen a lot of people say the Carolina Hurricanes are going to go all in to try and sign, so maybe he doesn't leave, but I do think that Gensler's another UFA. Teravainen is definitely a UFA. UFA. Then you have a couple of interesting RFAs on the Carolina Hurricanes team, including guys like Necas, Jarvis, and Necas, who are going to be looking for extremely big raises. So the Carolina Hurricanes do have a lot of cap space for this offseason, but not that much. So this Carolina Hurricanes team could look completely different. I mean, I think they could keep one of Skjei or Pesce. I don't think they can keep both Skjei and Pesce. I think they can probably make do without Ranson. Can run with Kochetkov and Anderson next year. I think they could also look to try and... I could see him move on from Teravainen. I think that's a possibility. I don't think there's a very likely chance that he potentially winds up staying with the Carolina Hurricanes, so that's going to be interesting. I've been seeing some people say, could they try and look to move Necas to try and keep some of the other guys around? I think it's a possibility, but I would think that the Carolina Hurricanes would much rather keep Necas than having to move him for draft capital. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens there, but I see that this is probably the last run for the Carolina Hurricanes with this current group the way it's constructed, and there's a very likely chance that the Carolina Hurricanes have some major offseason moves. I mean, there's also been some talk about Kotkaniemi potentially be dealt by the Carolina Hurricanes. There's been some talk about could they look to try and move salary elsewhere to keep some of these guys, because you have Gensel, you have Teravainen, who are UFAs, you have Jarvis, and you have Necas, who are RFAs. You have on the blue line Chatfield, Skjei, Pesce, Orlov, and Slavin are only a year away, if I'm correct, from UFA status. Ranta is a UFA. Anderson's only a year away from UFA status, so there's going to be a lot of interesting moves in the Carolina Hurricanes this offseason, so it'll be interesting to see who this team is going to be able to keep. Could they keep Teravainen, Skjei, Pesce, Necas, and who are they going to wind up being moved? So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Carolina. But that's not what we're talking for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. What do you think about Carolina? Could they keep most of this group intact, or because of their tight salary cap situation, the raises that some of these guys are going to need, do you think there's a very lucky chance we see a lot of major movement from the Carolina Hurricanes this offseason? What about the St. Louis Blues? Could they make some major moves? Could we see them trade a contract or two in the offseason? Could we see them try and change it to that blue line? Definitely have your guys' thoughts on that. Plus, what do you think about the Montreal Canadiens? Could they move Josh Anderson? Is it a very likely possibility for them? And if so, where do you think he could go? Could he go to an Eastern Conference team or a Western Conference team? Definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Plus, what do you think about the signing updates and the injury updates from the past couple of days? Definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So much for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're like to subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I'm not able to with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below discussing today's video. Also, the blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so if you check that out, I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. And I can't see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.